Welcome, scholars, to today's fifth grade reading lesson. Let's get started. All right, scholars, before we get started today, let's make sure we have all of our materials ready so we are set up for success. The first thing you'll need today is your reading textbook. The next thing you'll need is your reader's journal. You'll need your response sheet. And as always, a pen or a pencil, your favorite writing utensil. Now, once you have your materials, I want you to repeat after me. I am ready to learn when my mic is off until it is my turn to speak. I am ready to learn when my materials are in my learning space. I am ready to learn when I do not take pictures or record during the meetings. I promise TikTok will be there later. And I am ready to learn when I will respect my classmates and I will respect my learning time. So we have our things, we've set our norms. Let's get started. All right, scholars, I first want you to think of things that can be mysterious. Do you have something in mind? How do you feel when you see something mysterious? Let's look at our second vocabulary word, matted. And why is it important to get matted fur in animals or matted hair in people untangled? Have you ever had matted hair? How did you get it untangled? Think about the characteristics of tendrils of a plant. I want you to ask a partner, how do tendrils help plants climb? Can you name a plant that has tendrils? Next, I want you to think of a list of as many types of fastenings as you can. With a partner, talk about what types of fastenings do you use for clothing? And what types of fastenings do you use to keep papers together? And lastly, with a partner, I want you to talk about what you are like when wakening in the morning. Then I want you to think about, do you get up quickly or slowly when awakening? Are you cheerful? Or are you quiet? Let's go ahead and continue reviewing our vocabulary for this week. I'm going to first read the word aloud, and then I want you to repeat it to me. Our first word is mysterious. Please say mysterious. And mysterious is something that is not fully understood or explainable. For example, the mysterious sound kept us up at night. Our second vocabulary word is matted. Say matted for me. Matted. And something that is matted is a tangled mess. The girl's hair was matted after she moved around in her sleep. Our next vocabulary word is tendrils. Say tendrils for me. And tendrils of plants are long, thin sections that often twist around an object or another plant. Did you know? Some types of plant tendrils are edible. Our next vocabulary word is fastenings. Can you say fastenings for me? Fastenings, remember, attach objects to other things. For instance, fastenings are very useful for all of the paperwork in an office. And our last vocabulary word for this week is awakening. Say awakening for me. Awakening. And if someone is awakening, you are waking up from sleep. He does not like awakening early on the weekends. Let's review your knowledge now of context clues to determine the meaning of the word in bold. After leaving the hairdresser, my hair was no longer matted. I could comb through it with ease. In this sentence, if the unknown word is matted, what words in the sentence give us clues about its meaning? Well, in this sentence, the other words or context clues tell me that matted is related to being at a hairdresser and being able to comb through my hair with ease, which means it is no longer tangled. Let's look at the second sentence. When my sister woke up, her hair was matted, but I knew exactly what to do to get it untangled. In this sentence, what words in the sentence give you clues about the meaning of matted? The other words tell you that matted is untangled. All right, scholars, today we're going to watch a video. And as we are watching, I want you to think and ask yourselves the following questions. What literary elements are explained in this video? And how do writers use literary elements to help us understand the story?
I'm in the mood to write. Flow cab, let's tell a story. When you write a vivid sentence, the words come to life. Take a walk inside a sentence. The smells, the sights, think about it when you write. 5 senses to describe to the reader what the environment is really like. Taste, touch, sight, smell, sound. Describe all the flavors, the feelings that surround. The aroma of the roses, the chatter of the town. The color of the sky as the sun was going down. Can you imagine that? When you touch a surface, is it bumpy, is it flat, is it smooth like a baby's skin or rough like a cat's tongue? The 5 senses turn your pen into a magic wand. Do you know what happened yesterday? I went to the fruit stand to buy lemonade, and everything was pretty okay. There's more to it. Let's describe it in a different way. I saw bright lemons, felt the smooth lemon peel, heard the fresh lemon squeeze, so I knew it was real. It tasted so sweet. Yeah, you bet it's a picture, a story described with 5 senses. Yeah, show it, don't tell it. Why tell it when your 5 senses can develop a picture so clear that you can see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, hear it clearly? Yeah, show it, don't tell it. Why tell it when your 5 senses can develop a picture so clear that you can see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, hear it clearly? I was writing in my journal, coming back from the beach, from a trip to Puerto Rico. It was 95 degrees. The water was beautiful. The food was delicious. Wait a sec. Am I describing this with my senses? What did I touch or taste? What did I feel? What did I smell or see? Was the sky clear? Yes, indeed, even bluer than the ocean. I smelled coconuts and sunscreen lotion. I decided it was time to go for a swim, so I grabbed a snorkel and I dove in. I swam, tasted salt water on my lips. I listened close. My breath broke the silence. Looked below and saw a world full of vibrance. Through my eyelids, colors and surprises. A coral reef in green, pink, and violet. A giant sea turtle, a stingray behind it. The stingray was smooth, the turtle shell was bony. My 5 senses take me back to that moment. The visions, the sounds, the flavors, the aromas, the feelings of your words. When you show it, show it. Yeah, show it, don't tell it. Why tell it when your 5 senses can develop a picture so clear that you can see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, hear it clearly? Yeah, show it, don't tell it. Why tell it when your 5 senses can develop a picture so clear that you can see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, hear it clearly?
Let's take a look at today's reading objective. Our learning goal for today: I am learning to analyze and explain how an author uses imagery, literal and figurative language, and sound devices in a story to achieve specific purposes. You'll know you can do this when I can analyze imagery, I can analyze literal and figurative language, I can analyze sound devices, and I can explain the author's purpose for using sensory language. And you'll demonstrate your learning by explaining how an author uses imagery in a story to achieve specific purposes. Remember, scholars, when writing a story, authors include imagery, literal and figurative language, and sound devices in order to engage the reader's senses, emotions, and prior experiences. This helps the reader connect with the story to picture it in his or her mind. Let's get started. You may be pretty familiar with imagery or adjectives that help us to visualize, but authors also use other techniques such as figurative language. Look at the chart. What are the 4 types of figurative language identified on the anchor chart? Take a few minutes and jot these down in your reading notebooks. Similes and metaphors are both comparisons. A simile compares things using the words like or as. Metaphors suggest one thing is another. Look at the examples on the anchor chart. Under the simile, I notice Javier is being compared to an ox. I also see the signal word as. What 2 things are being compared under the metaphor? The car is being compared to an oven. It's really hot. Making sure to identify the comparison is extremely important, especially when a sentence uses the word like. Look at this sentence. Listen to the following sentence. She moves like a turtle. Is this an example of a simile? And how do you know? It is a simile because the girl is being compared to a turtle using the word like. Listen now to this sentence. Melissa likes pineapples and carrots. Is this an example of a simile? And how do you know? This is not an example of a simile because nothing is being compared. Very good. Now let's explore the other 2 types of figurative language. We have personification, which means to give human qualities or characteristics to an animal or object. I want you to underline the word person in personification. Let's look at the example. Our little boat skipped over the waves. I notice that nothing is being compared in this example. This helps me know that this is not an example of a simile or a metaphor, but I do know that this sentence is not literal because boats do not skip. People skip. The author has given the boat a human quality, which helps me to determine this is personification. Let's look at the last one. Hyperbole. An exaggeration usually used for dramatic effect or to make people laugh. I have a million things to do today. I want you to underline the word million. Notice that this is unlikely, that this person really has a million things to do. They're exaggerating that they just have a lot of things to do. It might feel like a million, but this is an exaggeration. And an exaggeration is a hyperbole in literature? Now that we understand figurative language, let's think about how authors use figurative language in text. Remember, in our first read, how we visualized what was happening in the story. Figurative language connects to our senses. When an author uses a noun in a simile or metaphor, the reader automatically associates the word with sight, sound, smell, taste, or even touch. Let's look at the example. The class was buzzing like a beehive. Let's focus in on the word beehive. What do you instantly think or feel? The noun beehive more than likely evokes the sense of sight and sound of a noisy bee. How is the author using the figurative language in the example sentence? I see that the author is making a comparison. A class is being compared to a beehive. I also notice that the author has made the comparison using the word like. Like is a signal word for me when there is a comparison. The author has used a simile to make a comparison between a class and a beehive. When I think about a beehive, my sense of sound and sight is triggered. I imagine a bunch of little bees moving around and making a lot of noise. So I think the author has used the simile to help me visualize and hear the class. Let's look back at our examples on the anchor chart. How does this author use the simile in the anchor chart? The author is using the simile to show how strong Javier is. The simile appeals to my sense of sight. How does the author use the metaphor? The car was a baking oven in the hot sun. Here, the author uses the metaphor to show how hot it is in the car. The metaphor is appealing to my sense of touch. How is the author using personification in our anchor chart? Our little boat skipped over the waves. The author is using personification to show how the boat moved in the water. The personification appeals to my sense of sight. And last, how does the author use the hyperbole in the anchor chart? I have a million things to do today. The author is using the hyperbole to show that the speaker has a lot of work to do. The hyperbole appeals to my sense of sight. Remember, the purpose of figurative language is to help visualize or create an instant picture for the reader. Figurative language is not the only way the author appeals to our senses. Look at the anchor chart. What are some other ways that authors appeal to our senses? We have sound devices, sensory words, imagery, idioms, adage and proverbs, and puns. Remember, authors use figurative language and sound devices for specific reasons. Let's take a look now at each one. A sound device is used to establish tone or elicit an emotional response. There are 3 types of sound devices that we will learn today: alliteration, assonance, and onomatopoeia. Like figurative language, sound devices can be used to develop strong visual images. They are also used to reinforce the mood or tone of the literary work, or to evoke an emotional response in the reader. As you analyze the text for sound devices, ask yourself why the author has chosen to use the device and how the author uses it to convey meaning. Today we will analyze The Secret Garden through this lens. How is the author's use of all imagery, figurative language, and sound devices impacting the reader? Let's look at our focus questions for today. What is an example of imagery, figurative language, or sound devices on page 87? Why did the author use it? As I think out loud, I want you to listen for the steps I take and the questions I ask myself to help me analyze how the author uses imagery, literal or figurative language, or sound devices to achieve specific purposes. I noticed that in the italicized introduction in paragraph 1, the author uses literal language to describe the garden and the moment Mary found the key. So why would the author choose to write a mysterious, walled-off garden that's been abandoned for 10 years and an old key half buried in the dirt? I think the author is creating a picture of the garden for the reader because the author wants the reader to feel how intrigued Mary was by the garden and the key and understand how mysterious these things were to her. The author's word choice helps to paint a picture in our minds. Let's hone in on paragraph 2. The author describes Mary jump roping in detail. Why does the narrator say Mary's cheeks were quite red? This helps me imagine her jumping rope to the point she was hot. This is imagery, and it helps me picture Mary in my mind in this moment, and it helps me connect with her as the main character because I have been outside playing or jumping rope to the point that my cheeks have been red too. Why did the author exaggerate when she wrote she was more interested than she had ever been since she was born? The author is stressing how completely focused Mary was in this moment, skipping rope. This builds up some suspense in the reader. Why would the author write that with the wind came in delightful little gusts and brought a fresh scent of newly turned earth with it? This sentence gives us insight into the narrator's perspective of the setting and the feeling or mood she wants us to have while we are reading. Now, let's move to the next page. I think that paragraphs 3 through 5 are important. What is another example of imagery on this page? Well, I recall reading the author using imagery by describing the robin swaying on a long branch of ivy. This helps me picture the robin in my head as Mary comes upon it. I also notice the author uses an onomatopoeia, chirp, in paragraph 3 on page 87, which is the sound that a bird makes. This sound device adds enjoyment to what I'm reading because I can almost hear the bird chirp in my head when I read. In paragraph 5, I see alliteration. The author writes, swinging spray and loud, lovely, to stress what she is saying. Alliteration is a sound device where consecutive words begin with the same consonant sound. I know that sound devices do 3 things: develop a strong visual image, reinforce a mood or tone, and invoke an emotional response. Swinging spray helps to create a visual of the setting, and loud, lovely helps to reinforce a mood. The robin was loud, but the singing was lovely or pleasant, reinforcing that the robin was showing off. All right, scholars, let's pause and reflect for a moment and ask myself, what steps did I follow to analyze the author's word choice or how the author uses imagery, literal or figurative language, and sound devices to achieve specific purposes? What questions did I ask myself as I was thinking? Remember, scholars, first we analyze the author's word choice and then make an inference about the author's purpose or message. Remember, we found several examples of sensory language or imagery on the first 2 pages. We even found examples of onomatopoeia and alliteration on page 87. What other sound devices can an author use? All right, guys, that wraps up today's 5th grade reading lesson. Keep reading. I will see you again next time. Bye.